Hello, I am Chris Horniak. Today it will just be me. Once again, I am TCF's editor and kind of SEO guru. I typically keep up on all the latest SEO stuff, and so I will be walking you through part two of our lesson series today. And today we're going to be focusing on specifically keyword research. Uh, Specifically, essentially, how to find a keyword, what makes a good keyword, what tools we suggest that you should use, maybe give you a bit of an overview of a couple different methods we like to use for finding keywords. So let's just hop right into it. So yesterday we kind of gave everybody the basic rundown of what a keyword is, all that kind of fun stuff, the really super basics as far as just what you need to know. So none of this is just, doesn't appear to be pure gibberish. So first off, okay, cool. So you should have my screen in front of you. I'm actually going to blow this up a little bit bigger. I know my screen is a little bit difficult to read, but you should be able to see everything. If not, you can just send me a message in chat, and I don't mind bringing it up a little bit bigger. But anyway, right now we are looking at SEMrush. As mentioned earlier, SEMrush is the keyword research tool of choice that we like to use. We have tried, I would say that the three big ones are Ahrefs, Moz, and SEMrush. There are other keyword tools out there, but for the most part, I would say that those are the three big industry ones that most people gravitate towards and use quite a bit. I've personally used all three, and I like SEMrush the most. I feel like it gives the most information to you. It's really easy to use once you get a handle of it, and they're constantly improving it, adding more tools, and just making it generally a better experience. But anyway, this is what SEMrush looks like. I know before we were just mostly looking at slides, but today everything's just going to basically me talking over my shared screen. But yeah, this is what SEMrush generally looks like. And it gives you a basic overview of your domain. So right now we're looking at the Content Factory's website in SEMrush. You can kind of see this is where we pulled the screenshots from yesterday that were in the presentation. So this is just, on the present period, we're up 5%. We're up 2% as far as keywords that we're ranking for. And we're ranking for a little bit under 15,000 keywords. So if you're on the main page of SEMrush and you jump down and you were to search for a particular website, so for example, we just searched for contentfact.com, which is our website. If you scroll down, you'll see this here, the top organic keywords. If you click it, it'll come up here with all the keywords that that website ranks for, and you can organize them into a bunch of various categories. Now, I want to talk about a couple things before we get into the actual keyword research, because there were a couple things that we went over yesterday or Tuesday that I want to go into a little bit more detail before we get into the nitty-gritty of how to do keyword research. And really just one major thing, honestly. So we talked about competition, and I wanted to just go into a little bit more detail about competition, because it's a pretty big deal. So we talked about volume, CPC, and competition. And competition can actually get broken down into three separate things, and they're all kind of important to know and understand what they mean. So if we look at these keywords that TCF's website is ranking for right here, there's actually three measures of competition for them. So the first is for the individual keyword. If we were to do a Google search for press release distribution, right, we would see our website ranking #1 for that. But if I was trying to rank for this keyword, what I would want to do is I would want to Google that keyword and say to myself, okay, cool, can I actually rank #1 or #3 or whatever for this particular keyword? Or is what's ranking for that keyword just like impossible to beat? Like, is it a Wikipedia page? Is it just something that's like, a 5,000 word long ultra in-depth guide that quotes like experts from the field, and it's just, you know, it's gonna be really difficult to write something that's 10 times better than that. So that's the first thing as far as competition you want to look at. The second thing is over here. If I mouse over this, just the competitive density. This is the competition score. So if you were looking on AdWords, which we'll be looking at in a little bit, it kind of chops everything up into high, medium, and low competition. And basically that's just everything broken down into thirds. So if it's 0.33 or lower, that counts as low. Between that and 6.6 or 6.7, that counts as medium, and 0.67 or above counts as high. So this specific score is typically more based on the amount of bidding that's going on for that keyword, and you can kind of the amount of bidding and the amount of people that are kind of fighting over that particular keyword. It's somewhat influenced by organic ranking, but it tends to be more influenced by CPC and how much and AdWords and how many people are actually trying to buy that keyword than anything else. Of course, there can be some keywords that have a lower CPC or no CPC at all that seem to have a higher competition score, but that seems to be, in my experience at least, pretty rare. So Google's algorithm behind that is a little bit more difficult to figure out, but that's a general rule of thumb to use. SEMrush then provides this other score over here, right, which I believe it refers to as keyword density. And this is more of a good factor for organic search. And it's broken up much in the same way, where lower is going to be easier to rank for and higher is going to be more difficult to rank for. I wouldn't say that it's good necessarily to target in the same way that like something that's a 0.33 or lower for competitive density is like a great keyword to target because it's probably not a lot of competition behind it. With this, you're very rarely going to see something that's below, like, I would say maybe a 0.45. I'm sorry, a 4.5 or lower. Most of the time, things that you'd want to target are going to be between, we will say, 4.5 and 60-ish. But just because something has a high keyword density doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't target it. It just means that it's going to be a little bit more competitive, and you should essentially play it by ear. And we're going to get into that a little bit later as far as how to juggle all the numbers that you're looking at and making sense of them. And, is this a keyword that I should rank for, that I shouldn't, or that I should go for, or I shouldn't? But just know in general that the higher this number is, the more difficult that it's going to be ranked for. The lower, the easier it is going to be to rank for. So that's that. That's just all I wanted to touch on with that particular competition thing. But yeah, let's get into actual finding keywords. So just because we happen to use it before, as an example, we used like the weighted blanket example. I figured that's kind of what we could go with today. So we're going to break this down into two kind of separate things, three separate things really, but two separate sections. So the first section is going to be doing keyword research, just basically on your own, not basing it on what other people are doing. And the second section is going to be how to basically look at your competitors and find what keywords that you can basically steal from them. For one reason or another. Maybe they're not doing so hot on that keyword, or it just is a really juicy target that is completely possible to rank for. So that's how we're going to split things up. So the first part we're going to start with is just starting off when you're not looking at your competitors necessarily, you're just kind of, okay, what should I rank for? And this is going to start off in a very not technical in any way whatsoever. So first off, before I get into that, I want to introduce everyone to the keyword spreadsheet. If you got the handouts that we sent over, I actually believe that we have them. I I believe that we have them in the handouts thing, but if not, if you go to our website, I'll actually have this sent to everybody, but we have a quick guide on how to use a keyword spreadsheet, and that's all this is. I'm actually going to blow this up too. So all this is that we're looking at right now is just a keyword spreadsheet. And once again, like you can grab this off of our website, but I'll make sure that the link is sent out to everybody and that it's also thrown in the handout so you can easily get it. I just wanted to open with this. When we're working with keywords, we're often working with like a lot of data. And over time, it's easy for that data to get lost. So it's important to organize it and just make sure you're keeping tabs on the keywords that you want to target. And so today, when we grab a keyword, I'm going to be throwing it into this particular keyword spreadsheet and kind of explaining how it works. But this is mostly an organizational tool. It can also be a research tool, simply because, once again, when you're working with a large amount of data, the more you can organize it, the better. But yeah, I'm going to go back over to this tab. So when you're starting off with a keyword, like I said, one of the most non-technical things that you can do is just think. You start off just nothing else, just getting out either a literal just piece of paper in front of you or notepad or anything, Google Docs, doesn't matter, just somewhere where you can essentially just write down some ideas. And this is essentially part one of keyword research, is just thinking to yourself, okay, where do I begin? Right? So if you are a weighted blanket company, the first thing that you have to think is like, okay, so like, what are people actually searching for when they want to buy my blankets? What are they trying to search for when they buy my products? What kind of questions are people asking me? And these are some things that maybe you know just because you've had your business for a while and you've talked to your customers and you have a pretty good idea of, oh, they want this thing or that thing. Or, you know, I always get asked this question, or on social media, people ask me this question all the time. So you just want to compile those ideas just into a notepad, into a document of some sort, just as a jumping off point. Because when you're starting to search for keywords, what you're really going to be doing is searching for phrases and then seeing what you can roll those into that makes sense for your particular company. And how you kind of go about doing this is going to be really dependent on your individual company and the kind of products that you're trying to sell. So that's the first kind of step. It's just kind of brainstorming a little bit and getting a bunch of ideas into a notepad, and just saying, okay, what are people actually searching for? Another tool for this that's really useful is this tool called Answer the Public. This is completely free. I'm told that they're eventually going to get a pro plan that's going to add some features to it. But for the most part right now, the functionality that I'm going to be showing you is totally free. You don't need to use anything for it, or you don't need to pay anything for it. And all you do is when you go to this page, it's just answerthepublic.com. All you're going to do is type in basically a really basic keyword. And so right now, I just have typed in the keyword weighted blankets, right? And then you type in get questions. It takes a hot minute to load. So just going to let that do that. Just going to scroll a little bit. There we go. It's loaded in. I know this is going to be a little bit more difficult to read, so I'm going to try and blow this up an extra large amount. But what it essentially does is it goes to Google and it does all these queries for the initial query that you put in. So we put in weighted blankets. So then it goes out and it finds all these long tail keywords for that keyword that or for that short tail keyword that are a little bit blown out, that are all keywords that people are searching for. So this starts off with, like, you know, all related searches. So it breaks it up into basically the, you know, why, when, which, who, where, will, can, what, are, and how. So you can see for the why, it has keywords like, why do weighted blankets work for autism? Why are weighted blankets so expensive? You know, down here, what, how do weighted blankets work? How weighted blankets are made? what stores sell weighted blankets, et cetera, et cetera. Then it has some prepositions. You can see it just breaks them down here. So weighted blankets for sale, weighted blankets for adults, weighted blanket sleep issues, et cetera, et cetera. And then comparisons. I find personally, this is an absolutely fantastic place to start your keyword research when you've just got a general idea. You're a weighted blanket company and all you've got in mind is I can't think of anything. It's just weighted blankets. Or alternatively, say you're a cloud hosting company and it's just you're I know there's a billion cloud hosting companies out there. How do I break in? What is my avenue? What is my avenue of attack? How am I going to possibly do this? How am I going to possibly jump in with all my competitors and figure out a way to get in that no one else is doing, right? And this kind of can let you know. Now, it does give you a ton of information. I do feel like it's worthy of pointing out. If you download a CSV, it will just basically throw you all of this information instead of being in images. It shows you in a spreadsheet. And then you can take that spreadsheet and maybe digest it a little bit more. In the same way that you would go into SEMrush and download a spreadsheet from there, or go into AdWords and download a spreadsheet from there. You could then take that data and throw it into our trusty keyword spreadsheet a little bit, just copy and paste it basically into here. And this would allow you to kind of navigate that data a little bit easier than, say, if you were just looking at these images. Because I can understand looking at this is nice to look at at first glance, but if you're actually trying to parse this into something useful, it's probably a little bit difficult, right? You probably don't want to do that. So yeah, you can break it down. Down here, this is just, it basically just has the same keyword, but then it just goes through the alphabet. So weighted blankets, and then what autofill does it get for all U, all V, all, P, T, O, et cetera, and it just breaks that down further. This is also in the CSV as well. So this is a great starting point, right? But when you actually have all these keywords, well, how do you pick those individual keywords that you actually want to target, right? Because the thing is, and this is really, really important, I'm going to jump back over here. One thing that's always important to remember when you're doing keyword research and you're looking at all these keywords are not just these magic phrases that you throw into a document and, oh, your content's ranking. Keywords are search intent. Keywords are someone trying to find something. And I know we briefly talked about search intent day one and a really basic way and the informational, navigational, transactional sort of way. But I want to look past that to what literal, going past these general categories, what is the actual intent behind a keyword, right? So if I go back over to this, someone that's searching for, let's see, let me find a good one that we could talk about. Someone that's searching for weighted blankets in epilepsy, right? What are they actually searching for? When they search for that particular keyword, what is it that they are actually hoping to find? This seems really obvious, but if you think past keywords and you think to the content that you're actually going to use the keyword in, what are they actually trying to find there, right? With a post on weighted blankets and epilepsy, what are they trying to find? What actual content is going to give that person value? This is super, super important. I can't emphasize this enough. One of the biggest mistakes that companies do when they're doing keyword research and when they're writing content is they go and they do all this and they go through, right? And they search through all their keywords and, they find a random keyword to go in on. And they're like, oh, this is a great keyword. It makes perfect sense. We can totally rank for it. And they completely miss what the actual point is that people are searching for. A great example of this, we once had a client at TCF and they had a type of security system right? And it was like a home security system. And not to get into the weeds of home security systems, but home security systems are usually in like larger buildings or just in general. They break up things into zones. So like zone 1 will be your bedroom, and zone 2 will be your kitchen, and like all this kind of stuff. And it just, all your sensors and everything just gets broken up into these, right? So they kept saying that they wanted to, they had this whole idea behind like a zone defense of, each room will be protected, have like this zone protection going on in each room. And that's what made them different. And they saw a keyword for that and like, okay, cool, we want to rank for it. And so they brought those keywords to us and we did a little bit of research, and they were adamant. They wanted to rank for these keywords. Well, if you actually were to go into Google and you were to search for zone protection or zone defense, what you would actually come up with is like literally nothing about security. You would come up with everything about football. Because in American football, zone defense it's a strategy. If you're playing zone defense, that's a certain strategy that they'll play to cover people in football. So literally everybody's searching for those keywords, or at least a large majority of people that are searching for those keywords, their intent is not to land on some company's website that is doing home security. Their intent is to like get some coaching material, right? It's players, it's high school and college players that are doing those searches, and coaches that are looking for some maybe training materials. It's not someone that is trying to find how can I best secure my home, right? And so I cannot emphasize enough that when you're actually looking at these keywords, it's important to know what are they actually saying. And one of the best ways to do that is just to like do a Google search, right? So if I look in, if I actually Google that keyword and I look at let me zoom in a little bit more. If I actually look what's ranking for these keywords, we can say, okay, cool. What are people looking for? What are people finding when they search this keyword? And we can see, right? We're getting a guide. If I click on the page, and I can't emphasize this enough, when you're doing these searches, you have to actually look at your competition. You have to look at what people are writing, because this both lets you know what your competition would be, and it also lets you know, okay, well, what are people talking about? And that gives you an idea what are people hoping to find here. So you can see this is just a little bit of a description about seizure disorders and their product. Okay, cool, right? We go here. This looks like it is a charity page showing they're trying to give weighted blankets for 2 epilepsy patients. All right, cool. That's just a duplicate. Look at this. This looks like it's a blog post talking about, okay, this is how you use one for epilepsy. Cool, right? So we generally get the idea now that someone searching for that keyword is going to be checking out or looking for those specific ideas. So now we know that that's probably a pretty good avenue attack. Not looking at numbers, not looking at anything, just looking at the keyword itself. So then our next step here would be to actually take that keyword and look at the actual numbers behind it, right? And how we do that is if we can just go over to SEMrush. We just weighted blankets for epilepsy. All right, so this is not necessarily a bad thing. When we search for this keyword in SEMrush, when it gives us, it says it can't find any information about it, generally what this means is in their database, it's a low search term, or it's a low volume search term. So this in SEMrush usually means that it's 10 or below, right? So then we have to make the decision, is it worth ranking for a keyword that has a super low volume? Now, for most people, the answer is probably gonna be no. Right? We don't want to spend our time looking for that particular keyword. And so now we have to kind of go back to the drawing board. We say, okay, that keyword didn't work for us or work out for us. What's the next thing that we can do? What's the next step that we can do? So we could, okay, cool. Maybe we need to take a different way in other than doing this method. And in that case, we can go to SEMrush. And what we can do is we can use this really cool tool that they have called the Keyword Magic tool. And this is under the Keyword Analytics. Now I've cheated a little bit because I've gone ahead and set this up, but all you have to do And this keyword's in beta. It just came out not that long ago, but I already love it. So I think everyone should use it because it gives you a really, really good breakdown of a particular keyword and of just a bunch of keyword phrases. So what you're going to do is in SEMrush, if you go to Keyword Analytics on your drop-down panel over here, and you click on Keyword Magic Tool, what it's going to do is it's going to pop up a little search bar. Load into that. And you can just search for basically anything. And this autofilling content fact, but you're really going to just want to put in individual keywords. And so for this, I just put in weighted blankets, right? And just so you know, every individual word is just word plus word by default in this. So just keep that in mind. It'll basically break them up rather than searching for like an individual long tail phrase, because this isn't designed to search for individual phrases so much it is to give you a bunch of phrases to look at. So anyway, when you throw your keyword in there, you hit enter or you hit search, and this is what it's going to come up with. So I've already done a search for weighted blankets, and this is the data that it shows me. I'm going to just move this over to the side. So to break down the screen a little bit for you, down here is all the data that it's found. It's currently organizing it by volume. Over here, it's showing all the individual keywords that it found that went along with weighted blankets. And if you were to click on these individual ones, it would allow you to filter the results down even further to help you figure out, okay, this is, you know, a particular keyword grouping that maybe you want to look at. So for example, if you're interested in weighted blankets and autism, you could click this and then it would break down everything. It would break down everything by those specific phrases rather than just weighted blankets. But I want to just look at weighted blankets for the example right now. And so that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to look at. So cool. We can see based on the data here, we have searching by volume. So these are the ones that are getting the most amount of search volume. Obviously, a weighted blanket's going to be a juicy keyword, but not one that we want to necessarily go after simply because it's going to be super competitive. Also, has a really high volume. And I believe I mentioned this before, but when you're searching for a keyword, when you see like a super high volume like this, like 165,000, right? That might be a sign that it's not the best keyword to go after, for the simple reason that it means that likely that's not a very specific search term. So we want to get a little bit more specific. So here we have weighted blankets for adults, right? That's a little bit more specific and it drops it down to 14,000. That's a really good volume. But once again, really competitive, right? We can see because this has a Google's competition score is giving this a 1. That means it's highly competitive. There's probably a lot of people that are either bidding for this keyword or trying to rank for it. There's probably just a lot of pages that have been written in the past for this keyword. So we know there's a lot of just jockeying around for that particular keyword. Likewise, the keyword density is pretty high too. So that tells us, cool, like this is really competitive keyword. So maybe you want to keep scrolling down a little bit here. How to make a weighted blanket. All right, so while I'm just going down and kind of throwing away keywords right now, I want to also mention search intent can help you figure out what keywords are going to convert and what keywords might not convert. So once again, thinking about search intent, we have to think about when we're looking at keywords, what is the intent behind a keyword? If we're theoretically a company here that sells weighted blankets, we probably don't want to have a post on our blog about how to make a weighted blanket, because unless we're going to make it look so difficult that someone's going to say, okay, I don't want to do that. I just, you know, I'm not buying, or I don't want to build that. Like that takes too long. I don't have the skills. I just want to buy one, right? Unless we're trying to make them think it's too complicated, then we probably want to avoid a keyword like that. So like for us, right, for our industry, when we're talking about like writing blog posts, you know, we'll have a guide for here's how to write a blog post, because writing is a skill. right? And we know when we write a blog post about here's how to write it, most people are going to look at that and go, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to pay someone to do that, right? And then they contact us and, business, right? But for something a little bit simpler that is within the realm of possibility, you have to make that choice. Is this actually an avenue I want to go down? So personally, I wouldn't want to rank for that keyword. We're going to keep going down the page here. Weighted blanket DIY, same kind of thing, right? Weighted blankets for anxiety and insomnia. Okay, cool. Now we're getting into what might be a particularly good keyword. So the volume is pretty good. It's not giving us a reading as far as density goes, which tells us this might be a newer keyword, or more accurately, a keyword that has been added specifically to SEMrush's database because there's probably a lot of movement on it lately. We can see that Google's score for it as far as competition is actually pretty low. That tells us, okay, maybe this is a keyword that we actually want to look into. So I'm going to bring this up over here, right? And actually, so like, just going to take this, go over to our form, drag that in. I can actually drag this over to the side so I can quickly do this. So position we don't care about because we're not comparing this for someone else's. Search volume is 4400. CPC is, let's see, 0.91. The competition is 0.09. And the difficulty is, for right now, not listed. So we'll just throw that as a 0. I'm going to drag you back in. Cool. So that's our first keyword here. Also worth mentioning, our keyword spreadsheet automatically color codes based on low, medium, or high. Once again, you can download this off our website. I'll make sure that a link is sent to everybody. If it's not already in there, even if it is, I'll make sure a link's sent to everybody. But it just quickly breaks it down. So when you have like hundreds and hundreds of things in there, in fact, I've already pulled some stuff here. When you have this amount of data, you can just quickly scroll down and the low and medium are pointed out to you, because obviously when you're dealing with a lot of data, it's a little bit difficult to look at. Anyway, okay, so we have our first keyword in here. We're gonna go back and we're gonna keep looking. So when we're looking down this list, we're gonna spot this keyword next, right? Weighted blanket benefits. Now, why did this keyword immediately jump out to me? Well, for a couple of reasons. So the volume is still good, 1,600. That's a good amount of people searching for this every month. The difficulty here looks like it's actually within reason, I would say, based upon the other keywords that are here in comparison. Likewise, Google score, this is solidly in medium category. So this actually looks pretty good to me. It looks like it's a little bit more difficult than the last keyword that we pulled out to rank for, but I'm still interested in that. So once again, I'm going to save you the effort of me copying and pasting that just because I did it the first time around, but that's a keyword that we would want to throw in, right? That we want to throw in rank for. Keep going down to see if we can find another one real quick. Probably this one has good metrics, but we don't want to rank for it once again because someone's searching for weighted blanket Bed Bath & Beyond. If we're being honest with ourselves, we probably don't want to go up against Bed Bath & Beyond as far as blankets go. Probably not the best idea. We probably want to avoid that. All right, keep scrolling down. See if we can find something else. All right, so this is going to be a different kind of post. A lot of the ones that we looked at might be a little bit more transactional, whereas this is going to be more informational, right? Because weighted blanket filling, right? Most people that are searching for this keyword, their intent probably isn't necessarily to buy. They just want to know what is in a weighted blanket, what actually gives it its weight, right? Excuse me. So in doing so, this isn't necessarily going to convert immediately, but because, this is pretty low, keyword difficulty is pretty low, the competition is a little bit higher, but the difference in these, right, tells me specifically that this is probably a keyword that maybe a lot of people are writing about, and maybe that there's a lot of competition for as far as people maybe buying keywords for it. But maybe there's not a lot of organic stuff going on there. So I'm actually going to try and figure this out myself by Googling it. Cool, so let's see what comes up here. And we can see, it looks like first answered, first search rating or search ranking right here. Seems to be very slow to load. And this is a comparison between, I guess, glass beads and poly pellets are the two things that people fill weighted blankets with. So this is just a comparison between the two of those. But it doesn't look like a particularly in-depth site. We go down to this next one. This looks like another website. Okay, so these are just informational pages, like basically product pages. This kind of stuff doesn't look like, if I'm thinking about, can I write something that's 10 times better than this content? The answer is easy, yes, of course. These don't look like they're particularly, they don't look like they are super in-depth blog posts. They just look like they're just quick overviews. And they don't really focus on the keyword that much. Yeah, fantastic, right? So we would add that keyword to the list as well. Now, for the interest of time, I'm not going to go through and try and, pull up 20 separate keywords from this particular method. But hopefully you kind of see the method for breaking down and searching for keywords, specifically for just going through when you're not basing it on your competitor, you're just kind of jumping in and saying to yourself, okay, cool, where do I begin? Where do I start? So cool, we found about 3 keywords that way. So I want to talk about the other method, and this is essentially jumping on and stealing, not necessarily stealing, but giving some good competition to your competitors, we'll say. And once again, this is something else that we're going to use SEMrush for. So now, I don't know if you noticed, but when we were going through a lot of those results, I went through earlier today, and I happened to notice that I kept seeing one individual company continuously pop up for weighted blankets. And I wanted to just take a look at them, because this is generally what you're going to do. So first off, if you have a business, you might have an idea of who your competitors are, right? For a particular, whatever particular field that you happen to be in. So you can take a look at them through SEMrush and see how well they're doing. SEMrush can actually help you with this a little bit too. It's not always the most accurate, but it is sometimes helpful. So if I just open up another instance of SEMrush and I search for our website, have it load. It's a little bit slow. As an aside, a side effect of doing keyword research is that you are going to have like 100 tabs open. So yeah, just get used to that. Keyword research is a little bit difficult to do on a laptop. If you are using a laptop, your screen can get a little bit crowded, but after doing it 3 or 4 times through, you get used to it. But down here in this competitive positioning map, this can actually be kind of useful. If you don't know who your search competitors are, or who your competitors are in general, this can kind of help you out. Same thing over here. So for example, for our website, it's telling us that Life Marketing, the Savior Social, Curata.com, tells us that we're competing with them. And honestly, how it bases the competition on is what keywords you guys are sharing. So if you're just starting off, it might not be super helpful for you. And if you are just starting off and you have no idea who your basis should be for search competitors, honestly, go to Google and just search for your product, right? So like if we were to go to Google and just search for weighted blankets, right? You'll see a bunch of them come up here. And I happen to notice when I did this before that the thing that came up more often than not was this company, Mosaic Weighted Blankets. So I figured, okay, cool. They seem like the obvious choice for that. So if you were theoretically, you had a weighted blanket company, they would be a good place to start. and I've already done a search for them. I've already pulled it up. So this is their website. They're killing it, right? Every month they're pulling in $115,000, $100,000 of traffic, which is pretty impressive per month. And you can see pretty recently, it looks like they had a bump up. So, you know, they're on the up and up. Great. That means this is great to look at. I'm going to break this out. Let's see what they looked at all time. Okay, cool. So they've had a huge spike pretty recently, right? So that means that they probably have done a huge SEO push, which could be a pretty good, if we're a new company and we're just looking to see what works, this can help us figure out, okay, what is working in this field, right? Oh, real quick, just something that I want to talk about very, very shortly. You'll notice here in SEMrush, it gives you this little trend thing, and it shows you, like, you can kind of see like these little graphs more or less. What this does is it shows just performance over time for that particular keyword. And so when you look at this, if you see these like upward sort of motions, this helps you figure out like what keywords have that upward mobility. Just really simple, right? That can help you figure out what keywords are currently active that maybe you should think about jumping on. So yeah, we're going to look at them. And what I've done right now is I've searched for them. They pop up here, and I'm currently looking at, I'm organizing their keywords by traffic percentage. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm not interested in stealing their keywords and competing for their keywords that aren't giving them traffic, right? I want to compete for the keywords that I know are actually, I don't want to say converting because we can't really tell what is converting, but we can tell what's generating traffic, right? Essentially, they've done the hard work for us with this. They have figured out what keywords are actually, you know, have search intent and aligns with their product. These are the people, you know, if there's a lot of traffic going to their page, that tells us, okay, cool. The people that are searching for these particular keywords they want weighted blankets. So that, you know, I mean, that might seem obvious for some of these keywords, but for your company, it might not be as obvious, right? So having that, being able to see that, that another website, another page out there is succeeding for maybe particular keywords that you wouldn't have thought of, or you wouldn't have thought the search intent matched necessarily, that is pretty helpful to figure out. So anyway, just looking down here, the first thing that we're going to do is just kind of take a quick browse, right? So when you're looking at competitors, the other column that gets added in here is the position. This is just what they're ranking for, right? So Mosaic Weighted Blankets is ranking for #1 or #2 for these keywords. And just once again, quick explanation, the blue bold number is what it currently ranks for. In parentheses, that number is what it ranked for at its last update period, right? So that can kind of show you some mobility too. Anyway, we're just going to be scrolling down here, seeing what ranks. And you can see based on the keywords that they have quite a jumble, right? If we're looking at the density, pretty big range. Looks like it's between about 80 and 60. A couple, actually, 53. And immediately we can spot out some things, right? So we see this anxiety weighted blankets is the keyword here. I'm actually going to take this size down just a tad, just so we can see these keywords a little clearer. So we can see this keyword, yeah, right here. We can see anxiety blanket, right? This weighted blankets for anxiety and insomnia, which I think we kind of brought up before, but this anxiety blanket, right? We can see that it's generating a pretty decent amount of traffic for them. Looks like it's pretty competitive from a CPC standpoint, but not necessarily from a competitive standpoint for as far as how other people are doing on this, for how competitive it is as far as people jostling for organic traffic. So that makes me think maybe I want to take a look at this keyword on Google. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go over and take a look at it, see what's actually ranking for this. So this is their page. This is what's ranking #1. And it looks like it's mostly like a product page that has a little bit of copy on it. Okay. That seems like something that we could theoretically write more. Another one of their pages, another competitor. This is do weighted blankets work for anxiety? This looks like it's just a quick page. Not a lot of content here. I realize that this font's small, so you guys can't read this. I'm not going to blow it up. You don't necessarily need to look at this. But this is, I would have to, if I'm eyeballing it, probably like 500 to 600 words or less. So not a lot of content here. So based on this, I would say maybe that's a target, right? So maybe that's a target for us. We'll have to look at it a little bit more because the volume is a little bit high and there's a lot of people that are competing for it. That's, once again, just, I know I didn't explain this before, but the results here is just if you were to go for that Google search, when it tells you, you know, about 19 million results or whatever, that's all that is. Great. Going back over here. So maybe we want to keep that in mind, but let's try and find something a little bit more specific, right? So if we keep scrolling down, try and find something good. And it's important to know that keyword research is a little bit of an art and a little bit of a science. A lot of keyword research, especially when you're going this kind of method and you're trying to individually pick out keywords to target for blog posts, one of the things that you're going to have to do is just kind of go through a lot of these. And there are methods, you know, a lot of people just grab, you can export the whole CSV and just search by competition, and anything under a certain amount, you just take all of those and throw them into a bucket and say these are our keywords. I don't like doing that. I think the hand-picked method is best because I think you get the best bang for your buck. And personally, when you're doing keyword research, I really think that it's a very hands-on process, and you really need to think of it in that way because you need to be thinking about what is the intent behind each individual blog post you're going to be writing. So yeah, basically, long story short, it's going to take some time. But scrolling down here, excuse me, we get this one right here. My eyes were drawn to it. Weighted blanket for ADHD. So I want to take a quick peek at that one. This is a little bit more competitive, but I just want to see what they're ranking for. All right, cool. So this doesn't look specifically super good. So I just mentioned that it's an art and science, and I lost it. Okay, cool. Based on this is a little bit like, kind of climb into the higher side, right? And it also has a high competitive score based on what Google was throwing us. And so that makes you think, okay, so like, why, Chris, what makes you think that that's a particular good target? Why are you going for that? Well, when we started this off, we talked about the 3 methods of competition, right? And the first one is the first one's at Google score. The second is SEMrush's score. But then you also have to have like your own internal score for when you actually look at the content. And this is one of those things that I really feel is important. Like I said, you know, I've already gone through and I've cheated a little bit. I've previously gone through and kind of picked out some of these keywords because, you know, I wanted to show you different examples. And this weighted blanket for ADHD keyword, when I looked at it, based on the numbers, I wouldn't necessarily think maybe it's the best keyword. But one of the things I picked up on when I was looking at this company's specific content was, hey, you know what? Their content isn't super good. Their content doesn't jump out at me as like really optimized content. And just so you know, that's something that we are going to get into in a later lesson, so you'll be able to figure that out for yourself. But just like, you know, assuming that most people here are just complete newbies when it comes to SEO, you know, if you're looking at this page, this weighted blankets, or what's ranking for this weighted blankets for ADHD page, if you just look at this, right, I have to imagine that looking at this, you could kind of tell yourself that maybe this isn't the best page. There's just not a lot of content here. There's just not a lot of content. It just basically looks like a quick page that they put together so they can get the keyword. But like, if you're thinking about content with that 10 times methodology that we introduced in day one, right? Then you're looking at this and saying, can I write a piece of content that's 10 times better than this? And yeah, right? I mean, if you're just looking at it as nothing else but length, but like if you think about someone that's looking for weighted blankets in ADHD, right? I mean, just briefly looking at this, this doesn't really go into anything else. It kind of just defines ADHD, defines weighted blankets, and say, hey, these can be helpful for the problem that your child has or that you have, but that doesn't really get into it, right? Where's the medical research? Where's an expert talking about, hey, I'm a psychiatrist. I've been in the field for X years. This is my opinion on this subject, right? Where is that? Where's the links to external sites talking about the medical impacts of ADHD and how a weighted blanket can help? All that kind of stuff. That's all missing. And knowing that, and also there's also like just a visual aspect. Like there's no image here. This text is just it's just there, right? Nothing here jumps out at me as like this is a fantastic SEO page. So that makes me think, cool, right? This should go on our list. This is a keyword that we should try and target. So yeah, right? I think we've kind of picked out 2 keywords this way. And you would just continuously go through this method. You would continuously go through, and looking at their keywords and seeing, okay, what has a low competition score? Or either based on Google, SEMrush, or just basically looking on the page and saying, okay, this doesn't look like it's super great. It looks like it's something that we can beat. And just then looking at the numbers, you want to try and find those keywords that they're ranking for, they're pulling some traffic from these keywords. You want to look at the volume. I would say, you kind of want to look, and once again, this is going to be industry specific, but just looking on what we have in front of us right now, I would say, okay, let's limit it to volume of like 200 and above, right? Because that looks like a minimum as far as what's generating content. There's some down here that it's like 170 and 140, but maybe, we want to look for bigger fish than that. So we're going to stick with 200 and above. Didn't want to do that. You also want to look at, you also kind of want to take a peek at the CPC, right? So like, just because something has 0 CPC doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a bad thing. But when something has a higher CPC, that can let us know that someone out there that has a weighted blanket website has decided that that is worth spending money on. So when we're looking at that, and we're looking at the CPC for like these individual posts, we can kind of get a good feeling when we see some money being spent there that this is probably converting for somebody, right? It's worth it for someone to rank for that kind of stuff. So that can tell us, okay, cool. Like, there's, someone out there really wants this keyword. They've found that it has some value to them. So that can let us know that a piece of organic content is totally worth ranking for. I know Carrie, day one, briefly mentioned this, but this is also one of the benefits to organic content is if you write a blog post for one of these keywords and say it doesn't really do well, you did all your research, you tried your best, for whatever reason, just doesn't do well. You can always go back and try and figure out why, you can try and go back and just say, okay, what can we do better here? What do we need to add in the future or in this particular post? You can figure all that kind of stuff out, and you haven't spent any money. You haven't invested, you haven't sunk money into something that you might have to just abandon. Whereas with CPC stuff, if you drop, a X budget on trying to get trying to squeeze some business out of a particular keyword and you don't get anything from it, you still have spent money there, right? You can tweak your campaign, but you're spending money to tweak your campaign. With organic content, you're not really doing that. So just something else to throw out there. I now am looking at the time. I'm realizing that I have gone a little bit over what I wanted to do, since we wanted to keep these to about an hour. But I don't want to kill off all time for questions. So I am going to pull over in the questions tab. I'm actually going to pause myself right now. There is some additional stuff that I probably could squeeze in, but I think I've covered the basics strong enough that in the upcoming lessons, if there is something that I feel that I missed, I can quickly come back to it. But yeah, I feel like we've gone over both methods pretty thoroughly, as far as finding keywords when you're starting from absolutely nothing, and also finding keywords when you're trying to grab them from your competitors. But yeah, so now I will ask if there are any questions. With GoToWebinar, there should be at the side a little quick panel for you to insert your questions into. Cool, and I see someone. How exactly the dollar amount for traffic cost is calculated. So how the traffic cost for this, I assume this is what you mean for SEMrush, right? How it calculates this is specifically a combination of ranking, so like where they're ranking, the theoretical amount of click-throughs. Usually, I believe if positions, only first page positions are really counted towards the traffic cost, for the simple reason of, like, you know, if you're paying for an ad, that's what you're paying for, right? So then it's just a matter of figuring out the arithmetic of how many click-throughs does SEMrush estimate they're getting for wherever the position happens to be on the page, times what the CPC is for that particular keyword. So, like, you know, they're ranking, Mosaic is ranking number one for, I don't want to do that, close. They're ranking number one, right, for weighted blankets. And the CPC for this is 78 cents. So SEMrush takes an estimate of what it thinks their traffic is that they get from that keyword, and then times it by the CPC rate for that keyword, and then they come out with that number. And then they do that for, you know, their total traffic score down the spectrum for everything they rank for, and that's how they come up with this monthly number, right? And I think that should answer it. But yeah, this number is 100% estimated by SEMrush. In our experiences, based on so we don't do at TCF, we don't generally do AdWords stuff. We're like a 100% all organic shop, but we do have partners that we work with for the more PPC oriented stuff. And in our experiences, when we go and we're working with them for a client that, and say they do spend a lot of money on ads, we typically find that the SEMrush estimate, when they end up shifting back and forth, and, like, you know, say they stop buying and they go into organic a little bit, it's hard to compare since they are kind of apples and oranges. But when you do compare them, we find that SEMrush's estimate is actually pretty accurate. It's not right on the nose, but it's within a realm of reason that if say your theoretical weighted blanket company did want to rank number one and get as much traffic as mosaicweightedblankets.com is getting out of this keyword, you'd have to spend oodles of money to get the same amount of traffic that Mosaic Weighted Blankets were getting. And that's the other thing too, that's worth bringing up here for, I guess, this particular question, is that when you're thinking about organic versus paid, with paid, you're not like, it's not like you spend like X money and then like you're just like at the top of the page for like a month. It's you're spending for those individual clicks. So when the individual cost is calculated, like they're not paying, excuse me, they're not paying for weighted blankets like throughout the month. They're paying per certain click amount. Whereas with Mosaic ranking #1, they're not paying anything for that. They're just ranking for it. Right? They're just at the top. But I think that should answer that question. Any other questions? All right. I am going to assume that is it, as I'm not seeing any other questions pop up right now. I will point out that if you have any additional questions about anything that I've said today, or anything else for any other reason, then I would invite you to send myself a message or Carrie a message. Carrie is Carrie Lee at contentfact.com. I am Chris at contentfact.com, just CHRIS at contentfact.com. And if you have any questions, just send them over to me, and I will try and compile all those questions and get those answers to you as soon as I possibly can. But yeah, thank you so much. I hope that this was helpful, and I can't wait to see you in the next lesson.